Florida, the late 1980s. A place known for sunshine, endless highways, and tourists searching for paradise. But beneath the bright lights and palm trees, something dark was waiting, something deadly. For months, men vanished without warning. Their cars disappeared. Their families waited for phone calls that never came. And deep in the forests of Florida, investigators would soon discover a horrifying pattern. A pattern that would lead to one of the most infamous female serial killers in American history. Her name was Aileen Wuornos, and her story is far more terrifying than most people realize. This is the story of violence, survival, murder, and a trail of bodies that shocked America. Before Aileen Wuornos became known around the world, she was simply a little girl born into chaos. Aileen Carol Wuornos was born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan. Even before she took her first steps, tragedy surrounded her. Her father, Leo Dale Pittman, was a violent man with a criminal history. He would spend time in prison and later die while incarcerated. Aileen never truly knew him. Her mother abandoned the family when Aileen was still a child. She and her older brother Keith were left behind. The two children were raised by their grandparents. From the outside, it looked like they finally had stability. But behind closed doors, life was far from normal. The household was filled with conflict. Neighbors would later describe a troubled family environment. As the years passed, Aileen became increasingly isolated. She struggled in school. She fought with classmates. She had few friends. Many people who knew her later described a young girl who seemed angry at the world, a child carrying wounds nobody could see. And those wounds would continue to grow. By the time Aileen entered her teenage years, her life was already spiraling out of control. She spent more and more time away from home. She often wandered alone. Sometimes she slept outside. Sometimes she depended on strangers. As she grew older, survival became her daily mission. There was no stable future, no clear direction, no support system, only uncertainty. Eventually, she left Michigan. Over the years, she traveled across different states, drifting from town to town, living in cheap motels, sleeping in abandoned areas, trying to survive however she could. Money was always a problem, and eventually she turned to prostitution. Florida became her new home. Its highways became her workplace. Night after night, she stood along roads waiting for strangers to stop. Every encounter carried risk. Every ride could become dangerous. And according to Aileen, many were. The years hardened her. The world had become a place she no longer trusted. In 1986, Aileen met a woman named Tyria Moore. The meeting changed her life. For the first time in years, she felt connected to someone. The two quickly formed a relationship. They lived together, traveled together, and built a life that, at least for a while, brought Aileen happiness. Friends later described Aileen as deeply attached to Tyria. She wanted their relationship to succeed, but there was a problem: money. The couple constantly struggled financially. Bills piled up, jobs came and went, and Aileen continued working on the highways. The pressure grew heavier every year. Nobody knew it at the time, but events were already moving toward a deadly turning point. November 1989. A businessman named Richard Mallory disappeared. At first, nobody thought much of it. Adults disappear every day. People travel, people leave, people start over. But then his vehicle was found abandoned. Weeks later, investigators made a grim discovery. His body was found in a wooded area. He had been shot multiple times. The scene was disturbing, yet investigators had no idea that this was only the beginning. Soon another man disappeared. Then another, and another. What initially looked like isolated murders began forming a terrifying pattern. A killer was hunting, and nobody knew who it was. Throughout 1990, bodies continued appearing across Florida. Victims were found in remote forests, near dirt roads, far from witnesses, far from help. Each discovery created more fear. Police departments from different counties began sharing information. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Most victims had been shot. Most had last been seen traveling alone. Most had disappeared near highways. Investigators feared the worst. A serial killer was operating in Florida. But unlike most serial killers they had encountered before, this killer left almost no clues, no fingerprints, no clear motive, no eyewitnesses, nothing. The mystery grew deeper, and the body count continued rising. The victims came from different backgrounds. Some were workers, some were travelers, some were family men. They had different careers, different lives, different dreams, yet all shared the same fate. They crossed paths with a killer. One by one, their lives ended on lonely roads. Families were devastated. Parents waited for answers. Children lost fathers. Friends searched for explanations. And still the killer remained hidden. The fear spread beyond Florida. National news began covering the case. People wanted answers. Who was responsible? Why were these men being targeted? And where would the killer strike next? The breakthrough came from something small, a vehicle. Investigators learned that property connected to victims had been used after the murders. Items had been sold, vehicles had changed hands, receipts were traced, records were examined, witnesses were interviewed. Slowly a picture emerged. Multiple witnesses described seeing a woman connected to the victims. That detail surprised investigators. Most serial killers were men. Very few women had ever committed multiple murders of this kind. Yet the evidence continued pointing toward the same conclusion. A woman was at the center of the mystery, and her name was Aileen Wuornos, or Manhunt Hunkel. As detectives gathered evidence, they turned their attention toward Tyria Moore. They believed she could help locate Aileen. Eventually, Moore cooperated with authorities. Under police supervision, she contacted Aileen. The conversations were emotional, tense, desperate. Aileen sensed danger. She knew investigators were closing in. With every conversation, pressure increased. Eventually, the walls began closing around her. There was nowhere left to run. January 1991. The hunt ended. Police arrested Aileen Wuornos. The woman accused of terrorizing Florida's highways was finally in custody. News spread across America. Television stations interrupted programming. Newspapers published her photograph. People were stunned. Many had imagined a male killer. Instead, they saw a woman whose life story was already generating headlines. The mystery was over, but the controversy was only beginning. After her arrest, Aileen spoke extensively with investigators. She admitted involvement in multiple killings, but her explanation shocked everyone. She claimed she acted in self-defense. According to her statements, the men had threatened or attacked her. Prosecutors disagreed. They argued the murders were intentional, planned, motivated by robbery. The courtroom became a battlefield. One side portrayed a cold-blooded serial killer. The other described a deeply traumatized woman who believed she was fighting for her life. The truth became one of the most debated questions in modern criminal history. Guilty. Aileen Wuornos was convicted of murder. The sentence was death. For many Americans, the verdict brought relief. For others, it raised difficult questions about abuse, trauma, and justice.